Well, welcome into the podcast today. And Dan decided, hey, why be indoors? Let's just go sit on my porch.
I can't.
Where are
wait.
you, dude?
I can't wait until the rain starts here. It's an overcast day.
That make the podcast interesting.
You know what? And if it does, I'm just going to sit here and let everybody watch me get drenched. No, I'm actually hosting a global leadership summit viewing party in the space where I'm normally podcasting from. So they kicked me out. So
But somebody's got to kick you out.
Well, it's
Anyway,
well deserved and worth it.
Indeed it is. And you've never looked uglier from a shirt standpoint. But besides that, you're looking well today.
Timothy, would you please redeem where we are and where this is going very quickly downhill?
Well, I'm not sure I could redeem the shirt thing. I just remembered to go with a solid because I was going to be on video today. I'm always being told no stripes or patterns in video.
Good call.
So
Good
I
call.
went with solid.
Good call. Yeah.
Game, Timothy, for those who don't know you, introduce yourself to our audience. We got a bunch of CEO and business owners that are trying to honor God within their business, and I'm sure they might recognize your last name, but introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, so Timothy Coors, and I am one of the co-CEOs of CoorsTech. CoorsTech is an engineered advanced ceramics company. We make components that go into nearly every industrial component, or in nearly every industry in the world. So our primary markets are semiconductor, aerospace and defense, medical, and then we do a whole bunch of other industrials. And yes, part of the broader Coors family, and so get a little bit of back and forth with my cousins that are on the brewery side, as well as some of our other businesses from the private side. But
what an interesting mix of businesses to be a part of in this political landscape, especially semiconductors and AI, how it's exploding. And then defense contracts as well are in the mix for some of your stuff, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so probably the most noticeable thing that we do on the defense side is we make a ceramic torso plate for our special forces, and as well as the broader U.S. forces. And then in the semiconductor space, we do a lot of stuff would be considered inside the chamber. So the chips are made inside special equipment that is pretty caustic and corrosive environments, and ceramics are one of those things that allow our customers to do what they do.
Love it. Timothy, tell us a little bit of the journey, how you got to today. Just kind of give us some of the backstory.
Yeah, so I didn't know what I should be when I was going to school, but chemical engineering was kind of what my dad did and what kind of our family did. And chemical engineers worked well in the brewing industry. So naturally I thought, well, I should just be a chemical engineer. And that was an eye-opening experience to pick one of the harder engineering subjects. And somehow I managed to get through and graduate, probably by the grace of God. Not probably, definitely by the grace of God. From there, I did a little bit of research on fuel cells, and then moved into the packaging industry, where I went through a program called Six Sigma. So I'm sure many people are familiar with that. So I really went from hardcore chemical engineering to industrial engineering. Must have done well enough because they moved me to be a supervisor and then quality manager. And then I took on a role as a project manager to build a waste energy plant for a family enterprise that we had bought a paper mill over in Sweden. So kind of moved there. And then when that project was wrapping up and we were looking at what the next steps were, we started talking with various companies, and CoorsTech had a spot for me to be plant manager, then general manager. And then I stepped out to lead another one of our kind of family businesses that was a startup at that time, and then came back into CoorsTech around 2015, 2016, and have been here ever since.
So one of the things I think is most fascinating is you just rattled it off, but you are co-CEOs.
Yeah.
And it's not just you, but it's you and
two of my cousins. So yes, it is a very unique structure, but I think something that your listeners certainly would appreciate is the CEO role is often very lonely.
100%.
And when you want to banter ideas off of people, you either need to find a C12 group or a Vistage or somebody else. But you can't always do that real time and live. So one of the advantages that we have is that we get to have those conversations around strategy, organizational structure, direction of the company, all of those type of things, all kind of real time in more of kind of a cohesive group. So I would say it has worked out well for us. Not all family members get along in that way, I would say.
Wait, what? Your family doesn't get along always at all times? Yeah, for real.
It's interesting. But I would say that we've found a working relationship that works well for us. It tends to be low ego, high on humility.
It has to.
And as I said, that opens up the possibility for us to have really good dialogue and discussions that aren't individually us isolated kind of in a box.
So just to be clear, 2 seconds, Dan. Sorry, I'm stealing one more question. I'm blocking you. Stay outside. I've asked Timothy off the record. I'm like, all right, seriously, how does it actually working with your cousins? Like, you guys fight, and the response I think is fine to share, because you were like, no, we get along well. It's more like we're functionally chairman of the board, right? It's kind of more of how you guys are functioning and getting the quality structure and people in place.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we do have a board structure, so that helps. They're all external board members, board of advisors. But I would say that we work as, I'll say, an office of the CEO.
Yeah.
And so that's very clear, that's very important for us to position to our team members, our executive team, is that don't play the mom and dad game with us.
Yeah.
Don't go to one of us, and if you don't like the answer, don't go to the next one to see if you can get a different answer. Usually if one of us speaks, that's what it's going to be. And so what that means for the three of us is we spend a ton of time doing lunches together, meetings together, making sure that we are cohesively aligned. And it really comes down to strategy. What is our strategic approach? What are we trying to accomplish? And are the decisions that we're making collectively or individually aligned with that strategy? And that really helps keep us kind of a little bit more lock in step with each other.
This is not unlike what Todd and I have to work through, because so many C12 companies are family businesses, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes they haven't been given the title CEO, but I was told one time, if you carry the last name of the family, just understand everybody thinks you're the boss and you run the place, right. Even if you're the chief cook and bottle washer. Yeah. And I think it's when you the fact that you three are able to work in such symmetry with each other is really fascinating, but you've done so strategically and you've done so intentionally. How do things like, you spoke of strategy, but how about core values and that kind of thing, Timothy? How do you guys wrestle through really getting into alignment on those types of core values, mission, your vision, things that drive the strategy?
Yeah. Good question. I would say that our upbringing was fairly similar in terms of both being raised in kind of Christian homes. So my uncle, their uncle, we were both raised in Christian homes. And so there's a commonality around that. I think the biggest challenge for us early on is when we took over the company, we had just acquired a large footprint in Japan. We had acquired a company in Japan. And when we started looking at our value statements, we started understanding that there was a direct translation that didn't really get at the heart of what we wanted those value statements to mean. So we spent a lot of time with consultants and others to really kind of flush out what each of us individually understood our value statements to be, what we were trying to express. And so through that process, we were able to kind of coalesce around some value themes. So we've got it broken out into kind of 3 buckets that end up being 12 different value statements with kind of definition. So it's a lot from an organizational standpoint, but it allows us through multiple countries, languages, cultures, to be able to better explain and define what we mean when we say this, or what we mean when we say that.
Yeah. So here's where let's add another layer of difficulty. When you really want to be faith forward with that, allowing your faith to inspire and inform how you go about doing that, and then you're doing it as a multinational company. Tell us a little bit about how you've taken that. It's one thing to try to translate that in our culture. It's hard enough to go from, I live in the Southeast. Todd lives in the pagan North Midwest. I mean, that was a joke.
Got a jab in there for sure.
Yeah. How it's hard enough just here within the States, but then translating that to a Japan, to a fill in the blank. Tell us a little more about how you guys have navigated those waters.
Yeah. So again, a lot of companies will come up with value words, and we had the same, where one of ours was dignity. And when you start looking at dignity and you translate that into various languages, it doesn't really come out as to what you want to express it out. So we still have that, but we've broken it out specifically in terms of what does it mean to honor and respect our coworkers, and what do we look at not just with our coworkers, but also with as a family business. Our employees also have families, they have communities, and so it's been one of those things that has allowed us to navigate some pretty tricky waters over the last, I'm going to say, 5+ years, where you've had a lot of political drama, I would say, throughout the U.S. You've had a lot of cultural drama.
Wait. Hold on, Timothy. You're trying to say it's been dramatic?
Well, and
in the industries where you're in defense, you've got a lot to navigate there.
Yeah, but it's not just the U.S. I mean, you've had these things go on, totally, in Germany or Japan or other places. So when we talk about racism in the U.S., you've got racism in many different areas, and it takes on many different aspects. So when we talk about our employee population and the diversity of different cultures and backgrounds, we could very easily go down the, I'm going to say, overly woke pathway of, everybody has a place and this and that. But we were able to rest back onto our values of how are we better together as an overall population using kind of these kind of criteria. How are we going to be better tomorrow by what we as a company are doing and building based on the mutual respect and understanding of each other. So I hope that answers some of the questions, but I think going back to the original premise is it did take 3 of us. We did it all individually, and then we did it all collectively again. So throughout numerous iterations, we really got to the heart of both our upbringing, both kind of who we are as a family in a much broader context, and then really, what do we want the business to be? How do we want the business to act? And I would say it's served us pretty well over the last handful of years.
So give a little bit of that story if you can. So the business was founded when? And give us employee counts, kind of paint a little bit of a scope of, we got some Japanese operations. How many employees do we have? When did we found it? Because color the commentary. So it's not like you just started, came down the Pope or, Moses down with the tablets of stone with a brand new company, right? Some of that is, if we're bringing values in and it's change, you're changing it from dad or uncles, right? It's a unique family business dynamic that you're in.
Yeah, so the business started in 1910, and as that, it was part of the brewery. Everything was part of the brewery. And then in the 90s, the non-brewing assets were spun off to a separate public holding company. And then, to make story short, in the early 2000s, the family repurchased the public shares of what is now CoorsTech to take it back private. And then through the 2000s, in 2010, we had a fairly major acquisition of some primarily European, but also U.S. assets. And then in 2014, we acquired the Japanese entity. I think at our peak, we were around 6,500 employees. I would say that through just business conditions and continuing to work on efficiency, we're closer to 4,500 probably right now. And so we're sitting on, what is that, 115 years of family history and legacy, a lot of family lore that, hard to say what's true and what isn't true.
May or may not be accurate. Who knows, right?
That's right.
So when you and your cousin sat down and we came up with values, what year was that?
That was probably around 2017, I think.
Okay, and you'd been in the role officially, all three of you, for how long at that point?
Probably really officially for about a year.
Okay, so you've been in the role a year. You've been around, but it's 100-plus-year-old company at that point. Did you celebrate the 100-year anniversary?
We did.
There we go. You had a shindig. I'm guess I know which beer you chose to have at the party, but you have a 100-year anniversary, and then you go off with cousins, individually come with the goals. You come back together. How far apart was what we had to what we came to, and how far apart were you from the cousins to coming together on the way we're going to do things for the values now?
Yeah, so I would say that the underlying themes that my uncle had at the business are carried forward through today.
Okay.
Our challenge was he had kind of 4 value statements, but translating really what we meant through those 4 things. It worked well when we were just a primarily North American, Western English-speaking culture.
Yeah. Now we got Europe and Japan coming in the mix. Things are different.
We started adding Europe and Japan, and we started asking our colleagues around the world, well, what does this mean? And we got a lot of confusing answers, or maybe not confusing, but a lot of answers that were different from what our heart was and our intent. That's when we noticed that we needed to do a little bit of work. So again, we went back and we did the work. How far apart we were, I would say that it's not like we sat there and did 10, 15 iterations. It probably took us 3 or 4 iterations to kind of narrow and coalesce. The challenge really was, how do you expand upon 4 value statements without making it an absolute mouthful that nobody can 100%. Remember? And so that's where we started bucketing things into 3 categories where we are better together, better today, and better tomorrow. And then we were able to take those original 4 statements, and again, I'll pick on dignity as one of them, without having to go through all 12 what we have today, to really start saying, how do we show honor and respect to the individual, both our coworkers, all the communities that we're in, the people that we serve? How do we do that in an environment where, again, we've got people that work at CoorsTech that are from all spectrums, walks of life.
At 4,500, of course.
And how do we do that in a way? But also, how do we do it from an external facing point where we're dealing with customers that have all sorts of different aspects to them? So, I say that from it. Values can take a life of their own, if you don't put work into them. And
everybody's interpreting them from their context.
Yeah, so we wanted to try and make it as clear as possible, and it's been interesting. I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, as we've gained a lot of traction with this, where now you have it a little bit more ingrained in the culture, and people are picking up on things. So yeah, we're proud of the work that we've done with that.
Yeah, I think there's a great takeaway for our listeners there, Timothy. Just because, and again, like you said, it's not that the values that your uncle had established, there was anything wrong with those. But to revisit, to make sure that what we're saying is what our employees, our customers in the community are hearing, and that it's translating well, not just even across cultural barriers of language and others, but every once in a while, not every once in a while, constantly we need to revisit these things to make sure that what we are communicating is actually on target with where our heart is.
Right.
So many of our listeners are going to be tagging into, so the businesses ministry concept, like Todd was talking about earlier. How does that translate not only through your values and such? I mean, because obviously dignity is a great core value, but how have you operationalized it, if you will, getting it down where the rubber meets the road?
So this is where, again, CEOs take on many different personas, and I would say that maybe more to my nature is, again, I will be open and honest, and I will talk about my faith and my walk with Jesus with people if they want to. But I also understand that people don't always want a CEO to come in and be like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Facts.
And so one thing that was in place before we came in, that my uncle had done, but we have continued to expand upon, is we use a group called Marketplace Chaplains. And so most of our U.S. and European facilities, I would say all of our U.S. and European facilities, have some type of chaplaincy program.
Yeah.
And really, when they get established, that is the inroads to where employees can have conversations that honestly they won't have with me. They won't have with their boss or supervisor. And honestly, most of the things that they have are not work related. They're family, they're parenting, we've got chaplains who do weddings. We've got chaplains who have done funerals for people because they aren't religious and they don't have anybody. But that opens up doors for our chaplains to have conversations. And so I think one of while we're too big for me to be on the shop floor every single day or visiting plants, I mean, it'd be a full-time job just visiting plants. Our chaplains are able to do that, and they know our heart, they know our intent, and to be able to hear the stories that our chaplains bring back to us, it's both heartwarming, but it's also when we know that there is a kingdom beyond earth, and the goal isn't necessarily just to live life on earth, but also to live life in God's kingdom afterwards. I would say that, again, it's not one of those things where our chaplains are coming to us every day with a conversion story, but I would say that we have at least multiple conversions a year throughout our population base. And again, those are life-changing for people. Their eternity changing. 100%. That's kind of where we have said that's going to be kind of our ministry into our people. Again, we have all the mental health and the health care and the other type of stuff, but a lot of times people just want somebody to talk to, and they don't want to go to a random, counselor or this or that. We've got people walking through facilities and they're like, oh, hey, I know you introduced yourself, and I've seen you talking to these people, and friendships develop from that. So
1,000% agree. If At C12, we don't have a lot of prescribed solutions. If we did, chaplaincy would definitely be on the list, because somebody who's not a part of your organization, there's built-in confidentiality there. Mm-hmm. There's some training, so they actually know how to have some of those, what they would call confidential discussions,
sure,
right? Something that's not related, and it might be related to my boss, right? Maybe I don't like my boss. Maybe I'm getting along with a coworker, but usually it's the rest of life stuff that comes up. And a boss at times is going, that's not my job to solve your marriage struggle. And right. The chaplain's like, let's go there. I'd love to chat through that, right? And having somebody, it's maybe not a counseling thing. I don't know if I need to see the counselor over this one, but just somebody who cares I can chat with, that's confidential, 100% agree. That's a hugely powerful thing. And to your core value of dignity, what a great way to give dignity to the employees by having somebody who's there to care and reach out, boots on the ground, proactively to reach out. Fantastically, 100% agree. Awesome deal.
And then again, one of our values is really about how do we serve kind of the communities and the families around us. And so our chaplains are known to go minister to family members of our employees. Like, hey, my mom is in the hospital. Can you come do this? I heard a story. This was now a couple months ago, but we had a mother go into hospice, and so our chaplains came in and they were singing hymns to this lady, and again, not our employee, they're not necessarily required to do it, but that's their heart, and
that's who they are.
It's who they are, and it's, as you said, Todd, it's a way for our employees to open up and share things that, yes, maybe about their boss, their employer, some of the things they're struggling with. But again,
I've heard your family's not perfect, so maybe it is you.
It might be me. It probably is me. But yeah, share stuff that is on their heart and what they're struggling with. And as we started talking about, there's been a lot of kind of chaos over the last handful of years, and
100%.
It's probably not going away.
How long have you guys been working with Marketplace Chaplains?
Oh, I'm going to say at least 15 years.
Yeah. Would you agree with me, Timothy, that there becomes a multiplier effect as you continue moving forward with the chaplains, just because of the long, the deep relationships that they can begin building with employees? When I have people ask me, what is a chaplain? What is that all about? You mentioned an EAP program earlier. I describe it, it's an EAP program with skin on.
Yeah.
And these chaplains are masters at knowing how to have permission-based gospel conversations. Yeah. So I just thank you for kind of letting us know a little bit of your journey and your experience as a company with that. I'm curious, because I know you get to interface with a lot of other CEOs. Does the conversation of chaplains ever come up with other CEOs?
It does. And I've known a couple who have implemented some type of chaplaincy program, and now they rave about it.
Yeah.
Others do it more internally, and they've been able to create an interesting environment where I was talking with one CEO, and his viewpoint was, if Christ really is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and his word is truth, then we're going to create kind of an interfaith kind of come together thing. And he said that it was very interesting where they would have all sorts of stuff be brought up in some of these dialogues and discussions. But at the end of the day, the only thing that ever stuck around was actual biblical truth. And so, again, that's another way and approach. So I would say that
there's not a one-size-fit-all solution here, but to your point, I think it's great when we challenge those that are followers of Jesus to be able to access tools and resources, just people that know how to do those things at a very, very high professional level.
Yeah, and I would say that there are some very type A personality CEOs that are more evangelists than they are, anything else. And so that may fit their nature more. I am not necessarily that way. And so A
If so,
chaplaincy.
you went into the wrong major.
Well,
You're going into chemical engineering. Come on now.
Timothy is not a good fit for the outgoing extrovert, right?
that's right.
Let's just, hey, Timothy, neither Todd or I are engineers. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah, very much not so. Yeah, we had, yeah. We'll move on.
It has served me well working for a materials company that does a lot of engineering, and when the chemistry comes into play, I can scratch the back of my brain and somewhat follow along with what our really, really smart people have to say. But
there you go.
It's usually going over my head too. So
Timothy, when you get into the business and you're nerding out, you're in the zone, you're in your best and highest use. I'm assuming that you've told before that your cousins are in different areas, right? But when you're in your sweet spot, what's that zone look like for you? When you're nerding out, getting excited, doing something in business, what sweet spot are you in?
Yeah, so just briefly explaining some of that. Between myself and my cousins, we don't necessarily have an area per se that we're responsible for, but I've got one that is more heavily on kind of commercial R&D side, one that's more financial. I like operations. I like seeing parts be made. I like the widget factory, so to speak. And so I love those conversations about process optimization, automation, just the technical challenges of how things get made is kind of the conversations that I enjoy. Unfortunately, as a CEO, I would say that I think as most people get to experience, your role is more people management and conflict resolution. And so, yeah, you do the strategic type stuff and you're pushing on strategy, but every time you push on strategy, there's something else that's kind of pushing back at you. And so I think the question of in the zone, I think is a good one, because oftentimes I want to be that in the zone type place, but oftentimes the organization is requiring me to be somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's exclusive to me. I think that's as CEOs, we can get really bogged down into what we're interested in and focus only on that. And I think what I've been learning and what I have more to learn upon is enjoy the times when you get to deep dive into the areas that you're interested in, but also understand that the real work of the organization is much broader and requires a much larger aperture and area focus. And oftentimes will be in areas that you may be weaker at.
And could that also not be one of the advantages of being a co-CEO? I'm guessing your cousins have different areas of expertise and skill set than you, and you guys are actually able to borrow from Peter Drucker. If you all you focus on is your weaknesses, the best you'll ever be is mediocre. Right. And so you're able to play to your strengths, because I'm sure as three different individuals, you all bring different strengths to the table.
The somewhat joke in a Christianish circle is we're an unholy trinity. I think it's very fair. Again, it gets back to having strategic discussions.
Yeah.
Or any discussions, employee relationship type things, or are we going to move on from an employee? All those type of things, those require thought process. And I sympathize with a lot of CEOs that are oftentimes isolated with that, or they have to find other groups that maybe don't know their business, or they consult with board members that kind of dive in for a day or two, and then, they're off to their own stuff. So it's really allowed us to kind of think a little bit more holistically, spend more focused time on some of those issues, where, as you said, one might bring more strength, one might have out of the box ideas, to ideally bring a more well-rounded decision.
Very fun. So I'm thinking through where we can go. There's a lot of different directions on it. What if you were in our shoes, what question would we be asking you? How about I go that route? Where do you want to go with this conversation? Because I'm going three things, talking through family business in my head, going all the roles and stuff. But where do you think you guys have some interesting insight to give us? What questions should we be asking right now?
I mean, a lot of people ask about the dynamics and the differences between private business, public business. And so from a business standpoint, I mean, we'll just banter around some ideas here with that one. I would say there's a lot of advantages to being private, particularly in the I'll call it the ministry space. It gives us a lot more freedom to operate with the chaplaincy type program. Because we can just do it. That being said, from an overall business standpoint, access to capital looks different from a public company CEO. But then at the same time, we don't have to do all the same kind of quarterly pressure reports, earnings per share type stuff.
Yep.
Certainly we have that internally, so I'm not trying to...
Yeah, you're going to track your PEG ratios or whatever you want to look to stuff, but at the end of the day, you can have a more long-term focus, right? That's one of the huge ones.
That long-term focus and being able to have a consistent strategy over, say, a decade-long period, as opposed to, I might be a CEO for 3 to 5 years with this company, so I need to, slash and burn and rebuild all within a short period of time. Yeah. Only to have somebody come in, 3 to 5 years later and do something different.
Yeah, I just can't see where managing to the quarterly earnings report, is a great long-term strategy, right? So, I have a lot of sympathy for CEOs that they get that kind of pressure. So I hear you.
I would say it also allows us to be more consistent with our people, because we can bridge quarter to quarter. We had one business unit that, we were waiting for some orders to come in. And so, we were able to be creative with kind of keeping talent and employees, either building inventory or other creative ways to kind of bridge that quarter to quarter. We do this all the time, as opposed to saying, we're going to miss our earnings per share money in this quarter if we don't lay off X percent of our workforce, only to rehire them, 2 months later.
And it's a ridiculous management strategy, but we see it all the time in the public company world. It's just maddening to me, but yeah.
So there's advantages from that perspective. I think we struggle sometimes. It's a capital intensive business.
That's right. Yep.
And so you can only grow as fast as you can generate cash, or you can raise private kind of debt capital to do that. And so that's the flip side, and the challenge that we have is,
Sure.
We won't go out and issue more shares because we don't have public company shares.
Right.
And so that's the trade-off with it. But I would say the net benefit overall has been very positive.
I love that. Timothy, the other thing I think that when we've chatted before, and when I look at the position you're in navigating, yes, some of the family dynamics, but honestly, you guys are pretty healthy from my experience. Mm-hmm. You've got governmental contracts at play. You've got the chip space, which is, again, totally different, even though they're not government contracts. You got mega nationals and huge companies you're dealing with. The relational back and forth between those, and again, I assume I don't actually know, it would seem like you have to navigate that beautifully and artfully. What are some of your top tips of maintaining that long-term perspective when it comes to those relational dynamics with like a bigger supplier or a government contractor or whatever? How do you navigate some of those long-term relationships?
Yeah, I think it depends on what specific market we're talking about. The semiconductor space, has a couple different ways in which they operate, and things are becoming more commoditized with that. So it's a little bit of a dogfight type mentality with some of
Right.
that. But at the same time, in that space, the push for who can do things better, better materials, better capabilities is never ending. And so that's where it fits our sweet spot a little bit, is we can kind of do the dogfight stuff, but let's just build something that is completely better, that kind of avoids some of that dogfight, at least for a period of time.
So quality is kind of more your sale right now from market positioning standpoint.
Yeah, again, we are so diverse that we probably cover all of that. So like,
so you'd have several product lines along the way. So if in a car world, you've got a Lexus and a Toyota and a whatever, probably not a Yugo product, I imagine.
I used to have a black belt mentor say you could do things better, faster, cheaper, but you can't do all three at once.
100%.
I would say that we kind of have to do things better, faster, cheaper, but not all at the same time within any one given kind of product line or industry.
Yeah.
So we've got other areas of business where it is a distinct product line. We make igniters that go into like oven ranges and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So if you have a gas range, that little glow plug could be one of ours. But that is a very distinct product line. So the sales channel and the relationship looks more like your old school kind of customer supplier, like, am I getting you enough? Is it on the right time? Is it on the right quality? That type of stuff. Whereas on the semiconductor side, the cycles of innovation are so quick and happening so often that really what they're talking with us about is, what are the things that are coming in the next, say, 5+ years that we can iterate on from a material standpoint that would be far superior to what we have today, so that they can sell a better piece of equipment.
I guess that also ties into your AI piece of your business that is a real complement to that.
Yeah, I mean, AI is pretty nebulous in how we use it, but I would say that we use it a lot. We're developing a lot of that internally for how we do material development. There are tools out there, and we are building capabilities that allow us to do faster cycles of learning that help us keep pace with our customers, or ideally kind of get in front of where our customers are going, particularly in those spaces where you say, okay, semiconductor, fast cycles of learning, smaller chip sizes, faster computing. Then you have the defense side of somebody builds a bullet, somebody figures out how to stop the bullet, so somebody else builds a bigger bullet, and so somebody else has to figure out how to stop that. And there's kind of this ebbing back and forth in those spaces. But then you have the automotive industry. They're continuing to innovate as well. EVs are pushing material challenges, well beyond where they were a decade ago.
That's fascinatingly fun. We actually might lose Dan from a video standpoint. He's texting me on the sideline. He might be gone. Timmy, let's go this way. So you've got a speak to the CEO right now. So we got a CEO or business owner, and let's just say they've kind of had Monday separate, then Sunday. They're leader in their church in whatever way, shape it is, Sunday school or elder or deacon, whatever the role is. But they've not done a lot on the side of how do I honor God in my business. What advice would you say to them when they're starting to go, hey, I'd like to do something here? What advice would you give them on that side to go, hey, this is an early, easy win. This is the piece we'd do it. What advice would you give that person as they're starting to explore the journey about honoring God in their company?
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll flip back to the chaplaincy. If you're worried about how does this impact my image, again, if you are bearing the image of Christ on Sunday, you should also be bearing the image of Christ on Monday.
100%.
But if that's a really hard first step, putting in a chaplaincy program where you can kind of create a kind of employee well-being program, that is a step. But ultimately, I would say that first and foremost, your executive team kind of needs to know where you stand and where your heart is. And I know that there's a debate on kind of how a CEO talks in a work environment versus how they would talk to their children or their church community. But while I feel that forceful words or colorful words can be used impactfully, I also think that if you're not going to talk to your pastor that way, you probably shouldn't talk to your executive leadership team that way either.
I like that.
Again, that's maybe more who I am. Not saying that I'm perfect, because I certainly have my moments of being animated. You can just ask my kids that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But so, I mean, I think that if you've never done it, part of it is just baby steps. And
100%.
And part of that can just be, if something comes up in conversation, it can be hey, I fundamentally don't believe this because of this. And then just leave it at that. Again, we've got people who I don't have an executive team full of believers. We've got those that are varying degrees of faith to agnostic to, whatnot. But they generally know where we stand in terms of faith. And
what you've not said, but I know you're living out, is you've got to have excellence first, right? Your day job needs to be excellent. And then the fact that you have a personal walk that is solid in whatever makes it a lot more of an integrous life you're matching. What I kind of hear you saying is, you've got a personal walk here and you can talk about it when it makes sense. Not always and not all the time, but you've got to be walking the talk behind the scenes.
I guess what I wouldn't want is any of my executive or any of my employees to walk into church and see me there and suddenly be like, oh, I didn't know you go to church. That would be a little bit damning on how I present myself. So I think that's a little bit of the philosophy. So again, it's, if you know that you're acting a different way at home versus work, that should be a wake-up call a little bit. And again, I wrestle with some of those things as well. Am I talking to my kids with the same respect and intent that I would talk to any of my employees? Or do I feel so comfortable with my kids that I can just yell and scream at them, but I'm not going to yell and scream at my employees? So again, it gets to that integrity situation where I think we have to, again, we're not perfect, but we have to continually put ourselves in check.
Yeah, that's well said. So I say let's head to wrap, since I think we lost Dan. But let's pray over, particularly if somebody's looking to do chaplains that are going, hey, I want to head into this. I think what you said is the perfect deal. Is what's the next baby step? What's the Holy Spirit calling you to do? Don't try to be Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby or Interstate Battery or CoorsTech or whatever. Try to be faithful to what God's calling you to do, and figure out that next right step that you can take, given your team, your leadership, and who's around you, and just be faithful to do that. So let's maybe pray over that. The person who's ready to do something, to have some courage. Can you end us in prayer on that one?
I will. Well, Heavenly Father, I'm grateful for this time and this day. Lord, I pray that your power and your spirit would move through just the leaders around this world, this country, those that will hear this, Lord, that you would encourage them to seek your will as to what the next steps would be. And Lord, if that is a chaplaincy program, or if that is starting a Bible study within their company, Lord, I pray that you would give them the courage, that you would increase their boldness to be able to step out in faith, Lord, so that you can work, and just that your power would move through companies across this world, Lord, that you would raise up revival within the
Yes.
workspace, in the business atmosphere, Lord. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.